Good morning. You are tuned into Behavior 911 with me, Kelly Syfan, on Nextdoor Radio. You can catch me at nextdoorradio.com or on the Nextdoor Radio app. Today's topic, we're going to talk about matching law and multiple schedules of reinforcement. And I know that's kind of technical language, so let's go ahead and start with a story. On the farm, on Clove Hitch Farm, where I run my business, Clove Hitch Behavior, we have a flock of geese, and they are delightful geese. There's one that is named Derek, and from the day that he arrived, he loved my husband and protected him and couldn't stand me. He's pushy to me, and he'll honk and hiss at me. He's not an aggressive bird, but he'll definitely try to push me away, and it feels like for no good reason. The first day he arrived, he chose this person is my person, this person isn't. And it's funny how those sorts of situations can come up in our lives. This for you with your family may look like, man, my son will only let mom put him to bed, and we don't know why. Or everything works great at grandma's house. Why is it going all up in the air as soon as we get home? It could also look like things are great at school and difficult at home, or great at home and difficult at school. Why on earth are these places different? Why isn't behavior more consistent across different settings? Can also look like it is the heat of summer and a kiddo is asking to go skiing, or it's the dead of winter and they're asking to go to the pool and they cannot understand why they're not able to. So let's go into these behavioral concepts, talk a little bit more about the science behind how these sorts of things get started, how these behaviors get reinforced, and what we can do to support more of the positive behaviors we'd like to see. So let's start with matching law. The little sentence piece that I use to help remember matching law is behavior flows where reinforcement goes. So, where we see more reinforcement, we're going to see more behavior. If I know that when I ask, say, mom for a cookie, she's going to say no, generally most of the time. But when I ask dad for a cookie, he's going to say yes, generally most of the time. I'm more likely to ask dad. Makes a lot of sense. Well, this can get into some really complex situations where we start to get into, well, if I ask mom and she says no, and then I ask dad and he says ask mom, if I ask her twice and I say that dad said it was okay, you can see where these big complex behaviors of trying to get all the little intricate pieces together so that we can match that reinforcement to our behavior can get established. You've probably seen some of this in your life. From there, we also want to look at why would behavior not occur in certain situations when we don't see reinforcement. That could be because of a punishment contingency. So all that means in the science of behavior is something that occurs that causes behavior to happen less in the future. So what we might be looking at is with one person or in one context or in one situation, I know that if I do this, it's not going to go well. And so maybe in that situation, I say, let's say I've got a lot of extra energy. And that situation, that context is school. And I know running around is not going to go well at school. I'm holding it in, I'm holding it in, I'm holding it in. I get home and I've got to sprint. I've got to get all this energy out. And you're going, holy smokes, where did all this energy come from? Well, all day, my behavior matched my context. I held it in as tight as I could. I got home and I really needed to run it out. And if I'm asked then to say, sit down and do homework in this context where I know running is okay, I might really push back on that. I might really have some trouble because I have been experiencing the context of school, no running, and now I'm in the context of home, running is okay. And I don't want to go back to the context of school while I'm at home. I'm done with that. I really, really want to push back to get away from that. So you might see some of those things starting to come up. Now, as you start to recognize that this might be happening, that behavior is flowing where reinforcement goes or moving away from where punishment is, you can start to see some of the patterns that are being established in your world. One of the most important times to consider this is if you've got a family of divorce and you've got two different households. What's different between those households? You may see that reinforcement is stronger for certain behaviors in one household and weaker for those same behaviors in the other, and we'll see the behavior move in different ways if the child understands the contingency differences between those two households. So let's say at dad's house, we have to sit at the table and have our napkin on our lap, and at mom's house, we sit at the breakfast nook and our napkin can stay on the table. A little bit different. Now, for us as adults, it's very clear that those are differences and we can modulate our behavior. Same thing as like going to grandma's for Christmas and there's different rules there, or going to aunts and uncles, going to their church instead of your usual church. There might be some differences there. But for kiddos, we don't always recognize that clear signal of difference. We don't always recognize that there is a difference between this house and that house, and we'll really push back against we want it to be the same. So with the school example, we wanted it to be different. Sometimes we want it to be the same. And what we're looking at here is what's called a multiple schedule of reinforcement. So we've got multiple things going on in our lives where different types of behavior are acceptable and reinforced at different parts of our lives in different contexts. And that's normal. But if we don't understand the change in context, or we disagree with the change in context, mom's house should be the same as dad's house, school should be the same as home, and we don't delineate between those different schedules occurring, we'll start to see behaviors that don't make sense. So for example, in the two homes with mom's house and dad's house, with the two places that we eat, with the two different types of expectations for where we keep our napkin, we may see a child always wanting to do one or always wanting to do the other and pushing back really hard in order to get the same thing to go across both contexts. Now, if we can help teach what that clear signal is between different contexts, we can help smooth that out a little bit. We also want to consider that if we've got those different contexts with different rules, the switch between contexts, so say context of school, the context of home, between different homes, between vacation and coming back home, even between playing outside and playing inside. That little transition moment is a moment of I'm going from this set of rules, from this schedule of reinforcement, from this pattern to a different one. And that can be a really tough transition for a lot of kiddos because they're not just physically going, say, from outside to inside, from school to home. They, in their mind, are having to pick up all the signals of the changes and know what those changes mean and how they should modulate their behavior differently. So often you'll find that there's a lot of dysregulation in those moments of transition, and this can be one of the reasons why. If this is something that you want to talk more about, of course, you can give me a call. I, again, am Kellie Syfan with Clove Hitch Behavior. I help change behavior while protecting the spirit. My number is 919-579-6192, and you can find me at www.chbehavior.com. There are a whole bunch of request appointment buttons. You're more than welcome to click any of those, get 30 minutes for us just to chit chat, see what I can do to help. And as you're going through and considering all this, if you want some support, feel free to do that. If this is all the information you need, fantastic. These last few minutes, I want to talk about how this affects us as the adults. So we're going through these same contingencies too. And you know those times when you walk into a room and you go, I don't know how to act, or I feel completely out of place. That may be your brain going, what context is this and how does it match to the schedules of reinforcement? How does it match the patterns of behavior that I know? What is predictable here? How do I know what to do in this moment? And when we're talking about raising kids, holy smokes, you haven't been at a year and a half with this kid ever before. You haven't been at 5 years old with this child ever before. You haven't been at 15 years old with this child ever before. So you're going to run into a lot of these moments where you're going, what I used before 6 months ago, a year ago, 10 minutes ago, doesn't work anymore and it may never work again. Wow. Take that moment, take a breath, know you're not alone, and know that you can get through this. Again, this has been Kellie Syfan. Until next time, this has been Behavior 911. You can find more information at nextdoorradio.com or on the Nextdoor Radio app. Listen to any of the past shows, and I can't wait to see you next week.